This is LSAT PrepTest 129, Section 4, Passage 1. This is about how regular citizens got the right to show up at FCC broadcast licensing hearings. The passage tells it as a story, which is off-putting, throws you off a bit, because if you read it so smoothly, you stop thinking about the structure. You finish it feeling like you understood everything, and then the questions eat you alive. Now, this is a law passage disguised as a history passage. The author is walking you through one court case that cracked open the FCC's licensing process. The main point is the United Church of Christ case forced the FCC to stop treating broadcasting as a private conversation between the government and the industry. Now, the most important paragraph here is paragraph 2. That's where the author drops the neutral voice and tells you what they actually think. If you sleepwalk through it, you're going to misread the entire passage. Now, paragraph 1 is background. You want to move fast here. All it does is paint the old picture. The FCC only listened to people with money on the line, and viewers and listeners didn't count. Citizens had no standing unless they were applying for a license themselves. Then one sentence at the end sums up the whole paragraph. The FCC looked like it worked for the broadcasting industry. That is the setup. You got to have it for the context, but nothing here is going to generate a hard question on its own. But paragraph 2, you want to slow way down. It starts off with facts. A church in Jackson, Mississippi tries to get a hearing in 1964 because a local TV station was pushing segregation and shutting out pro-integration content. The FCC says no. And then watch what happens next. The passage says the FCC attempted to mollify the church by giving the station only a short-term renewal. That word choice is a judgment call by the author, saying the FCC was trying to quiet the church down rather than fix the problem. Then the FCC argues that since it accepted the church's complaints, no hearing was needed. And the author jumps in with a question that is really an accusation. If you accepted that the station did all those things, why renew the license at all? That is the author catching the FCC in a contradiction. Then the author says the actual reason the FCC blocked the hearing was fear that the citizens groups would start breaking into the closeted worlds of government and industry. That means the author sees this as a power grab by the FCC rather than a procedural judgment call. So here's why this matters for the test. Most of the passage sounds like a calm retelling, but paragraph 2 gives us the author's opinion. If you flatten that paragraph into being just more storytelling, you're going to pick wrong answers on any questions about tone, attitude, or purpose. Then paragraph 3 is the back and forth. The church appeals, wins the right to a hearing, and the FCC ignores the public input and renews the license anyway. The church appeals again. This time, the judge doesn't just overrule the FCC, he revokes the station's license entirely and doesn't even send it back for more review. So the judge went further than anybody expected. And he said the church members were performing a public service. Read this at a normal pace, don't get bogged down in the procedural steps, just track the escalation of events. The church kept getting shut out, the court kept pushing back harder. Then paragraph 4 is cleanup. It exists there just to tell you that the case created a lasting precedent. Citizens can now challenge license renewals. The issues expanded beyond race to children's programming, violence, and political balance. This confirms the main point, but doesn't complicate it. The key move here is the author breaking character in paragraph 2. The entire passage is structured as a timeline, but right in the middle, the author stops telling you what happened and starts telling you why it happened. And so that editorial intrusion is what the hardest questions are going to ask about. Now, the pattern running through the passage is a cycle of resistance and escalation. The church pushes, the FCC pushes back. The church pushes harder, the courts intervene. Each round raises the stakes. Now, the author clearly sides with the church and believes the FCC was protecting industry access, not making good faith procedural calls. And the trap is that students will describe the author as being objective or balanced because the passage doesn't use emotional language. But the word mollify is not neutral. Closed worlds is not neutral either. Calling out the FCC's stated reason as a cover for the real one isn't neutral either. If you miss those signals, you're going to pick an answer that says the author is just presenting both sides. But that's wrong, of course, and it's going to cost you on any main point or attitude questions. Now, before you go on to the questions, you want to check yourself on these 3 things. First, why does the author bother pointing out that the FCC granted a short-term renewal instead of a full one? Second, what does the author think the FCC was actually afraid of? And third, why does it matter that the judge revoked the license outright instead of sending it back to the FCC?